Ladies and gentlemen, your meeting will be has already examined several important issues related to the COMESA infrastructure programs in transport, ICT, and energy. Infrastructure development is a key enabler of productivity and economic growth. In recent years, infrastructure development in Africa generally and the region specifically has gained momentum, propelled by increased investment from both national governments and international partners. Critical sectors such as transportation, telecommunications, and energy are being prioritized and underpin economic growth, regional integration, and access to essential services. Flagship projects like the transcontinental highways, digital connectivity programs, and renewable energy initiatives are defining the continent's development outlook. Nonetheless, obstacles such as political instability, logistical complexities, and funding gaps continue to slow down our progress. Despite these challenges, infrastructure development remains an essential pillar for realizing sustainable economic development and growth, and for improving the living standards and conditions for all the citizens of COMESA. In particular, the development of a good transport infrastructure network and transit facilitation instruments is key to the smooth movement of goods and services across borders. In Africa, roads are the main mode of transport. According to the African Development Bank report, roads carry at least 80% of goods and 90% of passengers on the continent. However, Africa's road network remains largely undeveloped, poorly maintained, and inadequate. Most of our roads are unpaved, isolating people from basic education, health services, transport corridors, trade hubs, and economic opportunities, and less than half of Africa's rural populations have access to an all-season road. According to research conducted by the African Finance Corporation, Africa's total paved road network spans approximately 680,000 kilometers, which is 6 times smaller than that of India, a country with a similar population but only 1/10 of the land area. Notably, the continent's most developed economies, particularly South Africa and Algeria, account for a disproportionate share of the paved road network, comprising 40% of the entire network. This disparity in road infrastructure extends to Africa's global standing, where despite occupying 20% of the world's landmass area, Africa's paved road network accounts for just 1.5% of the global total. The rail sector has been on decline in the region. This explains why more freight traffic is moved on roads by trucks for distances which exceed 500 kilometers in some cases, with freight rates that are twice those of rail. The railway sector in the region faces challenges such as limited coverage, lack of investment, and lack of harmonization. Different systems across the continent utilize a variety of track gauges, with northern, eastern, and certain parts of West Africa predominantly utilizing old meter gauge and new standard gauge railways, while southern Africa primarily relies on Cape gauge networks. The fragmented nature of railway operations has complicated the movement of goods across different regional networks because there is no connectivity between those networks. Henceforth, there is need to adopt a regional solution where the railways operate as one unit to effectively compete against road transport. The management of the operations of the transport sector depends on regulatory regimes and the facilitation instruments put in place to ensure smooth flow of trade, goods, and services. In this respect, the transport corridor management strategy, incorporating the reduction of border posts, as well as converting them into one-stop border posts, and implementing facilitation measures to reduce en route delays are pertinent and important. In this regard, COMESA has supported the development of transport corridors, such as the North-South corridor, Northern and Central corridors, and is promoting others. COMESA is currently pursuing the establishment of 2 corridor management institutions, namely Djibouti and Port Sudan. Corridor management agreements in these 2 cases need to be signed to actualize the establishment of corridor management institutions. Several transport facilitation instruments have been developed by COMESA over the years to address bottlenecks affecting cross-border and transport operations. These instruments include licensing of transit and cross-border transporters, third-party insurance, harmonization of axle load limits, vehicle overload control, gross vehicle masses, vehicle dimensions, and road user charges. And some of these instruments are being replicated in other regions, other RECs, and across the continent. The EU-funded tripartite transport and transit facilitation program has contributed significantly to the smooth flow of goods and services and harmonization of surface transport regulations and transit instruments through such kind of tools. And I'm happy to report that a second phase of this tripartite transport and transit facilitation program is now under implementation for the years 2025-2028, building on the deliverables of the first phase. In the area of air transport, I'm pleased to note that our air transport liberalization program in COMESA has improved the air services industry in the region, though not yet enough. In addition, Africa's airport infrastructure has witnessed continued expansion in recent years. However, it still falls short of global performance standards and handles only a modest volume of traffic. Recent studies conducted by the African Development Bank indicate the relatively high cost of air travel in the continent, stemming from low passenger volumes, coupled with stringent airspace regulations and elevated passenger and airport taxes. These are some of the factors hindering investment and growth in the aviation sector. Investment sectors in the aviation sector have even declined from 2002 to 2012, this decade, to 2012-2022. I'm pleased, however, to report that under the EU-funded support to air transport sector development program, which is being implemented by COMESA in the Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, and Indian Ocean region, many activities have been undertaken in collaboration with partners such as AFCAC and AFRA, aimed at furthering air transport market integration within the framework of the Single African Air Transport Market, SATAM. In the energy sector, the region has continued to make significant strides in increasing power generation and providing clean and modern energy services to all. COMESA member states have continued to invest in power generation infrastructures, as demonstrated by the continued increase in power generation capacities. The share of renewables in the energy mix has also continued to rise. The total installed power generation capacity has continued to rise from an estimated 48,000 megawatt in 2012 to 95,000 megawatt in 2021 and stands at 101,000 megawatt in 2025. Thermal power still dominates the power generation mix in the region, accounting for about 74%. Hydro accounts for about 19%, with renewables accounting for 7%, marking an increase of 1% comparing to 2023. Notwithstanding the steady progress achieved over the years, we are, as a region, in need to do more to achieve universal access to electricity by 2030. more than 650 million people on the continent remain without electricity, and many of them reside in COMESA member states. In response, we're currently cooperating with the World Bank under the Mission 300 umbrella in a program called Accelerating Sustainable and Clean Energy Transformation in Eastern and Southern Africa. Mission 300 is a joint initiative by the African Development Bank and the World Bank to provide electricity access to 300 million people on the African continent. And the Ascent program aims to provide electricity access to 100 million out of the 300 million. As a secretariat, we are positioning ourselves to support the Ascent qualifying countries, most of them are COMESA member states, in meeting their objectives under the country-specific Ascent projects. In the information and communication technology sector, despite significant growth in broadband penetration in the past decade, affordability constraints continue to price out hundreds of millions of Africans from accessing the digital world. Broadband remains too expensive for most people, which explains the persisting deficit in digital services and connectivity across the continent. According to the ITU statistics of 2022, Africa's internet access is far from the world average of 66%. Furthermore, where internet is available even, the prices are comparatively high with affordability levels that exceed the threshold determined by ITU. Mobile connectivity is also a key driver of digital transformation and socioeconomic growth. Emerging technologies in particular, such as the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence and 5G technologies, have a strong transformative potential and offer new opportunities for economic development, sustainability, and governance. Thus, addressing access to internet is crucial to support economic growth and productivity and ensuring that the region can fully leverage the benefits of the digital revolution. For this to happen, interventions are required across all segments of the digital infrastructure. COMESA has in the past 4 years implemented the EU-funded program of enhancement of governance and enabling environment in the ICT sector in the Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, and Indian Ocean region. The program aims at supporting the effective review and development of various regional policy and regulatory frameworks in a harmonized manner to enhance competition and improve access to cost-effective and secure ICT services. Some of the developed frameworks will be presented or have already been presented in this meeting for consideration. I'm happy also to inform you that COMESA and the World Bank are currently cooperating on a new project called Inclusive Digitalization in Eastern and Southern Africa, IDEA. The IDEA project aims to increase the number of people with new or enhanced internet access by 180 million, and the number of people using digitally enabled services by 100 million. The role of the COMESA Secretariat, like in the case of Ascent, is focused on providing technical support and capacity building to countries implementing specific IDEA national projects. Guests of honor, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, allow me to express our sincere gratitude to our development partners, especially the World Bank, the European Union, and the African Development Bank, for standing with us in COMESA in our efforts to develop the region, specifically in this case in infrastructure areas. Certainly, it is a matter of critical importance to all of us to utilize these resources made available to us by the international community most effectively in promoting the COMESA infrastructure agenda. Finally, I wish you very fruitful deliberations for the rest of the meeting and reaching practical and actionable recommendations to improve the infrastructure landscape in the COMESA region. I thank you very much